Mozart and Beethoven. So we'll be talking about these two great musicians and composers when we get to the passage. But first, let's have a look at the key words we'll be using today. Here we go! Let's have a look at the key words we'll be using today. Alright, up first on the left, we have a person with their guitar and they are writing out music. On the right, we have two people that are also writing music. Now, to write music means to come up with the notes you would need for a song and when they should be played. Okay, so it's writing out all the different notes on sheet music. Now, these people are using pens and paper. However, nowadays, people often write music on a computer as well. A person who writes music, we call him or her a composer. Now, a composer, this person writes music, right? Another way to say write music is to say compose. Okay, so write music and compose have the same exact meaning. Let's look at our example sentences. It can take a lot of time for a composer to write music. Sometimes it can take months to compose a perfect song. Yes, it can take a long time to make the perfect song. All right, let's move right along here to our next group of words and pictures. On the left, we have Eli Whitney, and on the right, we have Benjamin Franklin. Now, these two men are very famous historical people. They both invented great things and are considered by some to be geniuses. A genius is a person with a very high level of intelligence or ability. They're very smart and often do something that is very outstanding. Outstanding means marvelous, great, or wonderful. Let's look at our example sentence. Benjamin Franklin was a genius who invented some outstanding things. Yes, he invented some outstanding or marvelous things in his life. All right, next up here. All right, here on the left, we have a band. All right, and let's pretend that this band is in Europe and they go around to different cities in Europe playing their music for their fans. Now, to travel means to tour, okay? So we could say that this band is touring around Europe playing their music for people. Let's look at our example sentence. The band toured around Europe. Okay, so they traveled or toured around Europe to different places. Okay, moving right along here to our next group of pictures. All right, we see that the arrows are jumping from city to city. Let's pretend that this musician here is moving from city to city. He doesn't live in one place for very long. For a short time, he lives here, then he moves, lives here, then he goes here, then here, then here. But finally, he ends up here in Mexico City, okay? So this is where he settles down. To settle down means to not move anywhere, to stay in one place, one area, and live your life. Take on all of your responsibilities and work hard. Let's look at our example sentence. The musician finally settled down in Mexico City. Yes, our musician here finally, after all this time, settled down or moved to and didn't move around anymore. Okay? Let's move right along here to our next picture. Okay, if we look here, we can see that these three people are using their hands. Why are they doing this with their hands? Well, they are communicating to one another using sign language. Why is that? It is because they are deaf. To be deaf means to be unable to hear. They can't hear sounds, so they have to use sign language. Now, at one point in their lives, they probably went deaf. To go deaf simply means to become deaf or become unable to hear sounds. Okay? And so that is why many people use sign language like this. Let's look at our example sentence. She went deaf at an early age. So when this woman was very young, she went deaf or became unable to hear sounds. Okay, that's it for our key words. Now, let's read. Let's read. Mozart and Beethoven. Composers write or compose music. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was one of the world's greatest composers. He was a child genius. He played the piano and composed music from a young age. Mozart toured all over Europe. He wrote many outstanding pieces of music. He composed operas, symphonies, masses, and many other pieces. Sadly, he died when he was only 35 years old. Ludwig van Beethoven was another great composer. Like Mozart, he also traveled to play music, but soon settled down in Vienna. He was an excellent pianist, but he started going deaf when he was around 30. Still, he continued to play and compose music. His Ninth Symphony is one of the world's most famous pieces of music. Today, people still listen to Mozart's and Beethoven's music. All right, everyone, great job with the reading. Great job. Now, let's have a closer look at it, shall we? Okay, so composers. What do these people do? Well, they write or they compose music. That's their main job. Now, the first composer we look at is Mozart. And he was one of the world's greatest composers. He was one of the world's greatest people who could write or compose music. He was a child genius. So when he was a child, when he was very young, he was very intelligent, very smart, and had a great ability. He was able to play the piano very well as compose music that sounded very nice when he was a child. And Mozart, well, he toured all over Europe. We could say he toured or he traveled all over Europe. Why did he do this? Well, he toured around Europe and played music while he went around. He played music for people. He also wrote many outstanding, or we could say marvelous or wonderful pieces of music. Very great pieces of music. He composed many different kinds, such as operas, symphonies, masses, etc. However, sadly, when he was only 35 years old, only 35, he died or passed away. Now our next composer, Ludwig van Beethoven. He was very great as well. And like Mozart did, he also traveled to play music, or he toured around. But eventually, he ended up settling down in Vienna, or he ended up just moving to and living in Vienna. He was an excellent pianist as well, like Mozart was. And even though he started going deaf around 30, he still played and composed music for people. Out of all of his music, out of all of Beethoven's music, Probably his most famous is the Ninth Symphony. It is still used in movies or played by orchestras today. And people, to this day, still listen to both Mozart's and Beethoven's music. Still listen to it and enjoy it to this day. All right, great job everyone going over the passage. Now if you need to take some time, take some more time and review it. Then when you're ready, let's move on to the wrap up. Are you ready? Great, then let's get started with the wrap up. First, main idea and details. Number 1. What is the passage mainly about? Is the answer here A, the life of Mozart, B, two outstanding composers, or C, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony? The answer here is B, two outstanding composers. And who were the two outstanding composers we talked about? Well, we talked about Mozart as well as Beethoven. Now let's turn our attention to number 2. What happened to Mozart when he was 35 years old? What happened to him? Is the answer here A, he started composing music, B, he went deaf, or C, he died? The answer here is C, he died. Yes, Mozart died at the very, very young age of 35. Even though he had much life left in him, he sadly passed away at such a young age. All right, now for number 3, what does toured mean? Does it mean A, lived, B, traveled, or C, wrote? Toured means B, traveled. And we know that many musicians often tour or travel around a country playing music for various fans. Now for number 4, complete the sentences. A, Mozart began to compose music when he was a blank. What goes in the blank here? That's right, it is child. Mozart was very, very smart and began playing music and composing music as well when he was a child. Now for B, blank started to go deaf when he was around 30. What goes in the blank here? The answer is Beethoven. Yes, when Beethoven was around 30 years old, he started to lose his hearing, and even though he started to lose his hearing, he kept making music. Now for C, one of Beethoven's works was the blank blank. What goes in the blank here? That's right, it is Ninth Symphony. The very, very famous Ninth Symphony is still often used and played today. Okay, now let's go on to number 5 and complete the outline together. So we focused on great composers today. And our 2 great composers were Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Ludwig van Beethoven. Let's first look at Wolfgang. Was a child blank? Was a child blank? What goes in the blank here? Well, the answer is genius. Yes, he was very, very smart, very skilled as a child. He also composed and played music as a child. He composed blank, symphonies, and masses. What goes in the blank here? That's right, it is operas. So he was able to compose various different kinds of music, such as operas, symphonies, and masses. Sadly, Mozart died when he was only 35 years old. Okay, now let's look at Ludwig van Beethoven. Well, he settled down in Vienna, and he also began going blank when he was 30. What's the answer here? Well, the answer is deaf. Yes, he started to lose his hearing when he was around 30. However, he continued to play and blank. What goes in the blank here? Well, the answer is compose. Yes, he kept on playing music as well as kept on writing music. And his Ninth Symphony is very, very famous. It's still used in movies and it's still played by many symphonies. All right, now let's go on over to the vocabulary builder, and as always, put the correct word in each blank. First up, number 1. Someone who writes music. What's this kind of person called? They are called a composer. They write the music that people play. Now for number 2, to write music. What's this called? This is called compose. And if we look at composer, we can see that the root word, the basic word, is the same for each of these two words, compose and composer. So we could say here, a person who composes music, we could call a composer. All right, now for number 3, someone who has very high level of intelligence or ability. What do we call this kind of person? Well, we call them a genius. Yes, a genius. And there are many famous geniuses, such as Albert Einstein. Okay, now for number 4, to become being unable to hear. What's one way that we can express this? Well, we can say go deaf. Yes, so deaf means that you are unable to hear, and go deaf means to become unable to hear, right? Okay, now it's up for the vocab bonus. Here we have 2 true or false questions. Let's make sure to choose the correct answer here, okay? So first up, number 1. Ludwig van Beethoven wrote the Ninth Symphony. Is this A, true, or B, false? This is A, true. Yes, and as we mentioned before, the Ninth Symphony is still very, very famous today. Now for number 2, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart started going deaf when he was around 30. Is this A, true, or B, false? This is B, false. It wasn't Mozart that started going deaf. It was Beethoven who started going deaf. All right, everyone. Great job with the wrap-up and reading today. Very, very proud of you. Now, this was our last lesson for book number 2. All right, so easy 2, we've wrapped it all up. But I still want to encourage you to keep on practicing all the vocab that we've used in this book. Keep on going over and trying to use it in different ways. It's important to practice hard and practice often, right? Okay, I'll see you around. So long.